Good evening, and welcome to Beer, Booze, and Books, our second episode. Hope everybody had good holidays, and hopefully had a good day. Today was a little rough, and I probably look like crap, so I apologize. First off, allow me to apologize. I think the last video I said that we were going to talk about Larry Niven's The Soft Weapon. Due to the fact that I misplaced both the book and my notes on the story, it was kind of a scramble to come up with something else. But I came up with something, and hopefully you'll like it, and we'll see if you enjoy it, and I hope you do. So again, drink responsibly, and we're tonight going to, like hopefully we'll always do, going to start off with a drink of choice tonight. Tonight we are having, it's called Not Your Father's Root Beer, and man, that is some wicked glare. Let's see if we can't fix that. Probably not, and I apologize. Yeah, like I said, Fat Boy Amateur Hour. So, anyway, I've noticed that there seems to be really this trend, and I'm slow on the uptake, so maybe this has been going on for a while. A couple years ago, you started seeing a lot more, you saw beers that were stouts. You had stouts, you had pale ale, blah, blah, blah. You're starting to see more flavored type stuff. It seemed like, you had, Angry Orchard came in. You had a lot more ciders doing the rounds. Don't get me wrong, I love Angry Orchard. In fact, we'll probably cover it at some point. But you're starting to see more of these, this is a root beer, alcoholic root beer, I guess is the best way to put it. So let's talk. Let's have a drink, and we'll talk about it and see where we land. I guess it helps if I turn the label out, and maybe we'll get in a sweet spot without the glare. Drink responsibly. It's not bad. Not bad. I think if you would be best served if you were in the mood for something kind of sweet. This is very sweet. It's not bad. I think if you were in the mood for something a little, and this is almost 6-point beer or root beer or whatever. It's not bad. I think if you were wanting like a beer or maybe a cider, this wouldn't be for you. This is it is sweet. However, if you if you're in the mood for sweet, or you're just wanting something a little bit different, I'd say this is the way to go. It's not bad. Not Your Father's Root Beer. Drink responsibly. It's pretty decent. Pretty decent. Anyway, and I guess I should be honest, I've already had one of these tonight, so, whew, and not too long ago. Tonight, the story we will cover is C.L. Werner's Meat Wagon. Can we get that good shot of that, maybe? That glare. Yeah, we're going to work on that. I promise one day we will. Woo-woo. There we go. You can't see it very well, and I do apologize for that. Maybe if we do it over here. Oh, that's a little bit better. Beautiful, beautiful. Oh, I think we got it. Witch Hunter, the omnibus. Again, like with the last story we covered, you don't need to know anything about the background of Black Library and the Warhammer Fantasy line, the Warhammer 40k line. You don't need to know any of that to enjoy this story. This is, excuse me. This story is definitely very much a standalone story. It gets right to the point. It's actiony, got a bit of suspense in it, and it's beautiful, I think. C.L. Werner, he's written several different books for the Black Library. Both in the Warhammer 40k line and in the Warhammer Fantasy line. His Brunner, Brunner, I believe. Brunner is the way I say it. he's very much a take on The Man with No Name. For those of you who are American viewers, you have this very Werner is this very amoral bounty hunter, very brutal. But yet there are these little instances where he does these very humane things. So what we're going to cover a Werner story, hopefully before much longer. But the other character that C.L. Werner writes that is, I guess, fairly big in the Warhammer is, and I'm going to mispronounce this, but it's the way we're going to go with tonight, is Mathis Tholman. And there was originally a trilogy written, all in the omnibus, if you can get the omnibus, Witch Hunter, Witch Finder, and Witch Killer. And there is a continuous thread that flows through it. There's a number of short stories actually in this omnibus, which one we're covering, Meat Wagon, that is actually very much a standalone. There's a couple others in here. I think there's like 2 others that kind of set the stage for the first of the Mathis Tholman Witch Hunter stories, which is called Witch Hunter. And it has threads that definitely lead into that. Meat Wagon stands alone on its own. It really doesn't tie into any of the other stories that follow. So, as always, we start with our non-spoiler part of it. The review of is this for the you have our Witch Hunter and his compatriot. I'm probably gonna mispronounce his Strang something. Who's kind of the guy that follows along with him. They basically they run into a coach, horse-drawn carriage that's passing wherever, and they hitch a ride, and basically they end up in a little city that's apparently it looks deserted. Of course, things go south from there for them, and it has this really kind of, hopefully not too much of a spoiler here, but it does kind of have that trapped in a building with no way out kind of feel to it. So I very much enjoyed it, and I think if you have the opportunity, get this story. I think you will enjoy it as well. The character of Tholman is, in fact, C.L. Werner in the foreword to this book comments that it's really kind of a mix between the Puritanism of Solomon Kane by Robert Howard and Vincent Price's, I think it was called The Witch Finder General, the character he plays in that movie, which I think here in the U.S. was, oh gosh, what was it called? Something, the Conqueror Worm, something like that. But it's Vincent Price. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It's one of Mr. Price's. It's a good performance. It's really good. go see the movie. But that particular character in there is obviously taking advantage of his power and authority to live the good life. And this character combines some of those elements of that Puritanism you get with Solomon Kane and that righteousness, and it mixes with that, well, the perks of the office kind of a thing. This particular story doesn't necessarily quite go into it as much, but throughout the novels and the other 2 short stories, you kind of get, just as like a little sample of that, is there's a story where he goes in to stay at an inn, basically demands the best room for free, essentially. The innkeeper more or less goes along with it, so he stays out of trouble. However, I think it's a wine merchant that's in this room and protests. Well, Tholman essentially has him thrown in the dungeon. He does say that when he's done in the town, he will release the wine merchant, but it will help to improve the wine merchant's faith. So there you go. So that is the to conclude the spoiler-free part of this. Pick up this story. You'll like it, I think, especially if you like that really pulpy, swashbuckling type of story. I think you'll really like it. It doesn't. I mean, it's from the moment you start reading it to the end of the story, it's on. There's really no lag, nothing. It's a great story. So go ahead, pick it up. So let us move into the lots of spoilers. Well, part of the story, or part of the review. Sorry, the cat just hopped in my lap. Meat Munchkin, fat boy. We do have a bit of weight problem. He's just like me. We're both working on our weight issue, which he is definitely not amused with. So, Meat Wagon, the spoilers. But a little bit more discussion. If you've ever seen the last couple zombie movies, People Trapped in the Mall, what was it? Day of the Dead, whatever. It's got some of that in it. Basically, the story starts out. You have a bunch of passengers that are getting ready to board this. And I apologize, the cat just found one of his toys down there. You have a bunch of passengers. They're going to board this coach, and you got a mix of people here. It's if I recall correctly, you've got a merchant. He's traveling with a young lady. Pretty more. It really kind of implies a certain amount of moral dubiness. Sorry, yeah, shouldn't have. Basically, pretty sleazy arrangement is what you kind of get from reading it. He's traveling with a bodyguard. You have this, I think it's this kind of roguish gambler type person that's going along for the ride as well. There's and a dwarf. For those of you who, of course, know Warhammer, you kind of know what all is involved with it. If you don't, and again, you don't really need to know anything about the Warhammer universe to enjoy this story. Because if you've read any fantasy, I mean, you can pick it up. Oh, you got a dwarf showing up. Everybody puts their kind of unique spin on it, but by and large, you know what you're in for. So you got this. Maybe not necessarily know what you're in for. It's sort of a stereotypical dwarf, but an educated one. He's I believe traveling to the capital to take up a position teaching at one of the human universities. And there's a baroness there that's that's kind of implied that she's a little bit shady, So they all hop on the coach and they take off. And the two guys driving there's two guys that are driving this coach, and they are just shady as all get out. In fact, they're getting ready to leave. I think it's the merchant. It's kind of nasty. The merchant's kind of nasty to him, to the two drivers, and the two drivers kind of make have this little offhand conversation about, well, it's it's really enjoyable when you have passengers like this for what's going to happen. So as they start traveling, they're going along. All of a sudden, they run into the witch hunter and his personal. The guy's name is Streng, S-T-R-E-N-G, I believe. And he basically is this witch hunter's kind of bodyguard, attendant. Also tortures the people that the witch hunter needs to get information out of. And he's described as a pretty, rough and, pretty nasty character. Coleman, the witch hunter himself, though, however, is ducked out. I mean, he's wearing really nice stuff. He's got nice weapons. I mean, there's just this ruthlessness to him. So basically, they stop the wagon, And then the wagon drivers are kind of like, oh, well, we really don't have room, blah, blah, blah. Of course, the witch hunter, the story puts this way better than I'm putting it, but basically the witch hunter, gives some kind of snappy little, whatever, one-liner, and pretty much goes ahead and, he says, my horse threw a shoe, so wherever you guys are going, I got, going with you, till we can, get things taken care of. So, the witch hunter gets in the carriage, and just right off the bat, he asks everybody who they are, where they're going, what they're doing, and that's kind of where that chunk of the story ends, with String following the wagon. As they're going along, next part of the story picks up where obviously they've been in the carriage for a while. They've obviously had some sort of conversation with the different passengers and everything. So everybody kind of, I guess, is looking out the window, and the Thalman, they see the name of this town they're coming into, Masiri? I think I'm saying that right, maybe? Probably not. But basically, one of the guys says, well, that's a really weird language, or whatever, and basically, Thalman points out that they've entered Sylvania, which is the Warhammer equivalent, I guess, of Transylvania, I guess is the way to put it. And everybody's like, well, wait a minute. How's that possible? We're going to this other city, and the witch hunter, of course, to demonstrate, how observant and, how awesome he is, points out that, well, the wagon has been going this, like to the southeast, where they needed to head was to the northwest or something like that. So they end up in the city that is obviously a rundown, nasty. It looks abandoned, and Thalman realizes something's up. So basically, the wagon drivers kind of reveal. You kind of figure out what's going on. Because what happens is they start seeing all these faces appearing in the empty buildings and in the alleyways, and essentially they're ghouls, which. Again, you don't need to know anything about the background of Warhammer, but because they explain it well enough, is essentially these are cannibals, minions of something more evil, as you find out. So basically, things go south pretty much. One of the wagon drivers gets killed. I believe String shoots him with a crossbow. And then I think he gets run over by the carriage and then eaten by the ghouls. The passengers and everybody basically make toward the church, hallowed ground, as it were, and it's also the Church of Sigmar, which is the holy order which our witch hunter belongs to. And basically, they make their stand there. They barricade the doors. Then from there, you get a little bit of the drama inside. The merchant reveals to be a total, jackhole, like you didn't see that coming. And then, so that kind of, they bring in the other wagon driver, and Thalman goes and interrogates him and basically gets the rest of the information on what's going on and everything. And, well, that's happening. The story cuts to outside, what's going on with the ghouls and stuff. All of a sudden, this vampire entity shows up. I believe I think they call it a Sturgari. Again, my apologies for butchering the names of these things. Basically, he's definitely not the sparkly kind of vampire. He is if you really, I don't know, the story, and maybe I just really didn't quite read it right, but basically what you get from the story is sort of a cross between the man-bat and the Count Orlok from Nosferatu. Hopefully I've got all those names right. So basically just really nasty. I mean, there's definitely, so essentially, there's, of course, the witty banter between our hero and the evil vampire. Huge fight. Well, I gotta say, C.L. Werner, he really writes action really well. It doesn't seem with some stories when an author does action, it can be tedious because you're like, okay, and for me it's tedious. Some people, might like that greater detail, but teach their own. To me, you get the gist of what's going on. It flows really fast. And then at the end of the story, basically, our heroes ride off into the sunset, leaving the passengers behind to kind of, walk home, essentially, is what happens. So it's a very good story, very actiony. It doesn't waste your time. Yes, if you can find this omnibus, definitely get it. It's well worth. I say it's well worth price. I don't know if it's gotten more expensive, but I've had this one for probably 5-6 years. Oh, woo, 5-6 years at this point. So if you can find it, definitely get it. As a side note, for those of you who do follow the Black Library, or you're just starting to get into it, they, just like the Warhammer 40K novels, it's based on a tabletop miniatures game. Recently, I think within the last year or so, the Warhammer fantasy line has sort of gone through a reboot. So this world that was inhabited, as I understand, it's actually no longer in existence. They've kind of moved into a different phase, maybe the way to say it. And so I really haven't followed, and I don't even know if they've even got any new novels out that fall into that new reboot. And I hope it's not the cat barfing over there. So I know that they're still printing these novels that are set in their pre-reboot. So you can still get a hold of these, as far as I know. In fact, they have a ton of these. They've got the Dark Elves, elves. Pretty much, these stories are really based, do have a basis from kind of that J.R.R. Tolkien world with the characters and the different humanoid races. And it does owe a lot, I think, to Robert Howard's work. Robert Howard, Conan novels, Solomon Kane novels, a couple others, actually. He wasn't necessarily the first person ever to do the sword and sandal type fantasy, but I think he was really one that, especially with Conan, that brought it to the fore. The Warhammer guys, I think they do good work, and they definitely put their own spin on it, and then, it's enjoyable. So, Witch Hunter, Meat Wagon, if you can, pick this story up. I think you'll like it. Again, just a little housekeeping. Allow me to apologize that we did not cover Larry Niven's The Soft Weapon. If I can find it around here, we will have maybe an extra reading this month. In fact, I would like to maybe eventually move it where we do this twice a month. But right now, I think with work and everything, once a month is all I can give you. So, if we can find everything, next story will be Larry Niven's The Soft Weapon. Failing that, we'll do something else. We might actually go ahead and give you that Werner story I was mentioning earlier, or hinted at, whatever. So, again, drink responsibly, for the love of God. Drink responsibly, people. And I hope until I see you again, you all have a excellent month. And thank you for joining us at Beer, Booze, and Books. Good night.